how would I name myself if someone said, "What have you done?" And it was just immediate. I said, "I'm an educator."
I have been in education 65 years.
About 23 years.
Over 50 years.
This is my 50th year teaching, and this is my 41st year at Lourdes.
I've been in education for 44 years. It doesn't seem over a day.
I started out in primary grades, and partly that was because I was short.
The first student I saw was an 8th grader who was taller than I was.
I was 18 years old, and I walked into a classroom of 69 children at Our Lady Queen of Heaven, and I thought I would die.
I walked in and there were these 58 little squirmy 3rd graders and thought, I can do this. They told me I could do this.
There was a small girl sitting in the front row who said to me, "Sister, you really don't know what you're doing." And that was true. I felt like it with 54 children.
We entered into something perhaps with fear and trepidation, but we gave our whole heart to it.
I've been in the education ministry for 46 years, and to tell you the truth, I think my heart is still there.
Our teaching has been very Franciscan. We have been among the people.
What are the times that God is trying to speak to us?
Let's see if you can make Francis looking at Our Lady.
The Romans destroy their temple.
When we do our syllables,
Amen.
In the early 1900s, the Polish immigrant population of the Diocese of Toledo, Ohio, was booming. Bishop Joseph Schrems negotiated staffing needs with the Rochester, Minnesota Franciscans, who already had Polish sisters working in Toledo.
The agreement was that a province would begin here in Toledo with the specific mission or purpose of educating the children of Polish immigrants. Their first school was St. Hedwig's in Toledo. Mother Adelaide, Sister Antoinette, and Sister Elizabeth Stotka, who all came from Rochester, but then the teaching staff of St. Hedwig's rolled into that membership of the original province.
when the Sisters of St. Francis heard this call, they put their whole hearts and souls into this ministry from its beginning.
Mother Adelaide was an educator, both by training and by inclination. We would look at her now and say she was a schoolmarm. And I think that level of commitment had a trickle-down effect to all of our sisters.
The demand for teachers was so pressing that the sisters were called into service very quickly, probably with some informal marketing help from the local clergy.
Catholic schools were mandated by the Second Council of Baltimore. And so every parish, regardless of how small, had to have a school. They heard that there was a new order in Toledo that was willing to send sisters, even small numbers of sisters.
I'm not Polish, I'm Irish. They said, oh, by the way, they pray in Polish, and we do all of our sacraments in Polish. I didn't realize either that I had to teach Polish. W imię Ojca i Syna i Ducha Świętego, Amen. And then I said, Oče naš, and the kids continued. And then I said, Zdrowaś Maria, I think. Well, anyway, whatever it was.
That element of Polish population gradually went away. And ethnicity wasn't really quite the big deal that it had been in the beginning. It was not unusual for a young woman who had had an 8th grade education to go on to 2 years of normal school training. There was not college education. Rather, they learned methods, and for a 15 or 16-year-old to be placed in charge of a primary classroom was not unusual.
When I started teaching, I was 19 years old.
I was 17 years old. I was 19 when I started teaching.
The notion of certification didn't really start getting a toehold until the 30s. Normal school education was normal, probably from post-Civil War on through the First World War and through the 20s. So that while it seems kind of horrifying, it was actually the status quo in all schools.
I was 17, I was a second-year novice at the time, and I had 55 little second graders.
We have a number of sisters who went out as postulants, who came back to the Mother House during the summers and were working on high school credits.
When I started teaching, I was about 18 years old, I'm going to say. It was just overwhelming to me, everything that was expected of us.
It wasn't until 1929 when the entire community of Sisters of St. Francis had at least a high school diploma.
On my first day of school, I was very afraid. I was at St. Lad's, which had about 27 sisters, and I waited till they all went to their jobs. And I was the only one in the house. But I knew I had to go, so I forced myself out.
In 1920, when Central Catholic opened, we were asked to staff that school, and then it became like a crying need for academic preparation.
When I went to the high school, I had to prepare myself 2 weeks in advance for any lesson that I was teaching. I was teaching the DNA molecule, and one of the students said to me, "Sister, you could be a doctor, couldn't you?" In my heart, I said, "Oh my gosh, you don't know what you're saying to me."
For many years, the sisters' salaries were extremely meager, creating a hand-to-mouth existence.
Pastors agreed to pay, the salary range would have been anywhere from $100 to $200 annually for an individual sister. And I might add that that was just for the teaching sister. Principal who didn't teach wasn't paid. Housekeeper who was there really making her contribution to the well-being of the sisters and to community life in general wasn't paid. It was just the teaching sisters.
The direct generosity of parishioners helped to offset the sisters' financial challenges.
What can you do with $36 a year tuition? I think the folks understood that the sisters weren't getting very much, didn't have very much. People had gardens, and there would be a bushel basket of stuff come in, and chickens come in, and eggs come in, and a side of beef come in. People were extremely generous.
Professional preparation of sisters continued to challenge the congregation.
What came to be required in just about every state was not necessarily a degree, but evidence that one was working toward a degree. These nuns really worked hard. They taught all year. They usually picked up 2 classes during the summer. Very often they went to school after school to pick up more credits, and the degrees slowly came. But it was not an easy process by any means.
We were going to classes on weekends to University of Detroit. We went to Livonia. During the summers, we went to Mary Mance College to try to get our degrees. I think it took me 12 years to get my BA.
Despite any challenges the sisters faced, they knew they could count on the creativity, teamwork, and support of each other.
What is a common denominator among us as educators? I think it's just the fact that we are all in and have always been all in with teaching.
There were no lay teachers at that time in the schools. And so the sisters taught us, and our principals taught us how to become teachers.
I believe that I became a good teacher because of the mentoring of our sisters. We did not have student teaching. We did not have many even teaching classes per se.
I remember bulletin boards because I was at Regina Chaley and they were almost wall size. But how much fun we had creating what we needed for those giant bulletin boards.
All the sisters came back in force to the school. Hotter than blazes, we were in our habits, in not air-conditioned classrooms, doing bulletin boards, not only for our own rooms, but for the lay teachers. That was our school. We were owners, and the lay teachers saw that. We were not just hired hands.
I was a lay teacher. There were 3 of us, and there were 16 sisters. They guided us. They were mentors because we were young. We were first-timers. Plebes, if you will.
The community gave me so much, but it gave me a great start to say,
all right, here you are, you're an 8th grade teacher, you are the leader. And I took that leadership opportunity and parlayed that all along, because I've never looked at any job I've had to say, I'm not teaching.
As more and more sisters earned their undergraduate degrees, they were then sent to pursue master's and doctoral studies.
Well, Mother Adelaide understood the value of sending sisters to other institutions. Sisters went to Notre Dame, to Creighton in Nebraska, the University of Minnesota, the University of Michigan, Bowling Green State University, a lot of sisters to the University of Detroit, Wayne State University. A number of sisters went to the Catholic University in Washington, D.C. They didn't limit themselves to just Catholic institutions.
I think the best Christmas present I ever got was a microscope when I was a kid, and that just blew my mind, and I wanted to be a scientist.
You want to be left with a really concentrated solution.
I think that we stand on the shoulders of giants. They were remarkable teachers. And I think of these women who got their doctorates. When women were not really welcomed in the sciences and were not terribly supported, they were out there saying, yes, you can do it.
Each of us was prepared well for what we were asked to do. And it was all linked to Mother Adelaide's desire that we would not become caretakers in a classroom, but we would be real teachers.
There was a slowdown in the request for teachers because during the early years of the Depression in particular, the birth rate was so very low. Then we had the Second World War and the baby boomers, boom, everybody's school systems grew, and consequently so did the demand for teaching sisters.
However, this golden age of Catholic education did not last.
Between 1966 and 1972, there was a 30% drop in school enrollment in Catholic systems. And at that same time, during the early years of the Second Vatican Council, we also experienced a drop in vocations. Tuition went up because no sisters. These very large schools had to hire lay people who, of course, had more realistic demands in terms of their salaries. And so Catholic parents who had for years supported two school systems found the burden too much.
This period caused great tension in the struggle to keep Catholic schools alive, especially in underserved areas, and to broaden, not narrow, their scope and services.
Being in the central city, there was a lot of concern for making sure children would have breakfast in the morning, to stay after school a little bit longer to do homework. You would see them with spring coats on. We had to find ways to get coats and hats and gloves, looking at that whole child so a child could learn.
Our teachers worked with children because they loved them. They worked in parishes because they loved the people.
Children would come to you and say, I can't do math. You can't do math? Everybody can do math. What do you mean you cannot do math? I can't. I said, yes. If you give me a chance, I'm going to give you the keys to math. And you're going to be able to do math better than anyone else. Don't give up.
One year I had 3 grades, first, second, and third, all together. When they dropped 1 grade, finally after 8 years, and I had only first and second, I said, what am I going to do with this extra time?
This era also provided an opportunity for the sisters not quite comfortable with the classroom to transition to other ministries.
We had this little transition era that, in a sense, led to a whole new ministry, not teaching reading, writing, and arithmetic, but teaching Jesus.
Sisters became DREs, Directors of Religious Education, and coordinators of religious studies for not only elementary and secondary schools, but also for parishes. They moved into areas of adult education, office coordinators, clerical work. Some of us took on the challenge of superintendency.
The breadth of educational need invited sisters to minister in many ways beyond the traditional classroom.
Ohio is farm country. The migrants needed to have education, and our sisters worked with these children Some of our senior sisters would tutor children in math and in reading and try to get them up to par to the classroom.
I wanted to work in special education because I was always drawn to that type of child.
I was so excited about teaching adults because they wanted to be there. I found that there is a nurturing that we do with adults. And I didn't realize that until somebody says, oh, we don't want to leave the class. We just really enjoy being with you.
I had the blessed opportunity of working as a missionary in Tanzania. They often would say that to me, that you listen, you care about the way we think. It did change my life.
I went to study, and the need was for someone to be at the diocesan level as a school psychologist, doing testing in all the elementary schools, and there were 96 of them in the Diocese of Toledo at that particular time.
Most sisters served as classroom teachers, but some transitioned to serve as school principals and administrators.
It was the first day of school, and we had worked for a year getting it ready. And the bell rang, and all the children ran to their classrooms. I remember standing in the hallway. All the teachers were gone, all the students were gone, and I looked at my secretary and I said, now what do I do?
I enjoyed being with the kids. I was on the playground, I was in the lunchroom, and those were the joys of being a principal. You were free to build relationships with kids.
It was a ministry of caring for individuals. Whether it was caring for each child, the teachers, parents, that was central to that ministry.
I didn't miss checking papers and preparing lessons, but I did enjoy being around with the children, being able to encourage them.
I remember when I began as a principal, there were 30, 40, 50 sisters who were principals, and we would work together and learn together. There were a lot of them that were on speed dial for me my first years in Port Clinton.
Today, the crown jewel of Sylvania Franciscan education is Lourdes University. Not many people could have envisioned its growth from its humble beginnings.
Just prior to 1960, the Ohio Board of Regents accredited Lourdes Junior College as our own institution that would just educate Sisters of St. Francis for the first 2 years of their college work.
I went to school at Lourdes Junior College. I like to brag that I was in the top 10 of my class, but then there were only 9 of us. It was a small college in those early days.
Gradually, the school opened its doors to lay women and then to lay men, moved slowly but surely toward becoming a 4-year institution, and just recently accredited by the Ohio Board of Regents as a university. It was a slow process, 30 years, to make that move.
It's an excellent point. It gives me great joy that we are a community of sisters. We are a community of educators. I think we're gutsy. I have not heard a Sylvania Franciscan say, oh, I can't do that. And that's what I tell our students. What you see around you happened not because it was easy, but because the sisters believed in the mission.
I'm going to ask you to find a school that you want to visit.
For the past 10 years, I've been preparing the next generation of teachers.
James, can you read gap closing?
I love to teach.
This grade shows how
to continue to share with others what they're going to need to be successful in the field.
The first thing to do is the extraction. I am professor of chemistry, generally organic and biochemistry. Many of my upper level students want to be into medicine or dentistry or veterinary sciences, and they really need to do well in organic chemistry.
So I just had a quick question. I didn't really understand.
Somebody comes and I can give them some words of wisdom and move them ahead and help them to be better adults. That's what speaks to me. I love the students. I do.
God is to be glorified.
Very often, the reading that is used at the baccalaureate liturgy is taken from Jeremiah. And it says, say not you're too young. I know the plans that I have for you. And that's what I think about at that liturgy, that the possibilities for them are endless because they've had this wonderful liberal arts experience.
It is our future. It is part of our educational legacy. Sponsored ministries are very unique, very special, and very much a responsibility. Lourdes is that.
Franciscan education involves far more than transferring information from teacher to student. Rather, it is the act of reverently forming mutual, personal relationships.
This is not me knowing everything and you knowing nothing, and therefore I'm going to set you straight. Relationships is a hallmark of our spirit. It's in our DNA.
Whenever we have a relationship with a student that made a difference in their life, you were able to write a note in the notebook that made them feel so proud they would keep it for the rest of their life, to say somebody thought of me in a way that spoke of value and love.
We're not making pizzas. We're not selling cars. We're not reconciling a bank teller drawer at the end of the day. People are there in every transaction, and if you forget that, then woe is us.
It never ended with the classroom. The lunch given. Your family needs some extra assistance. If you stay after school, I'll be glad to help you. It was holistic.
What endures after so many years of teaching, mentoring, and guiding others? Those who have experienced the Sylvania Franciscan ministry have not forgotten it.
A lot of people that have been educated by our sisters now are older adults, and they just said, I know this sister, I'll never forget her. She did this, she did that.
I had Sylvania Franciscans, and they were human. They loved us, they laughed with us, they cried with us, they helped us, they cared about us.
And I still have kids in my life who write to me. Kids that are now in their 50s, but we still communicate.
I can't go to places without people coming forward.
People would stop the car and come out of the car to say thank you, that what you did for my child.
I was on my way to Alaska, and I was on a tour bus, and two ladies jumped up and said, we remember you from...
I've met some of my first graders 30 years later. To have them come back and tell me what they learned and how much they appreciated what they got then, that was very revealing to me.
I hear it over and over again. We're warm women, and it's a love that the children and the parents felt.
Since 1916, Sylvania Franciscans have served in 120 schools. The adventure, challenge, and mystery of this long journey has touched many of the sisters personally.
I was very happy to teach all these years. We did touch many, many children, and I would do it over again anytime.
I can look back now and see the big difference we've made in all those children that we taught.
I hope that I've been somewhat of a light for them and to them.
I wouldn't trade it now. I think it's helped me develop to who I am.
I've never regretted being in education.
Mother Adelaide instilled within us to love who you are and to love what you do. And I felt that, and I did that.
My life in education was magic. I loved every single step of the way. It was the most growthful, rewarding, spiritual journey of my life.
I am just so proud to be a Sylvania Franciscan. Having been educated by our sisters, I know the impact that their lives have had on me.
Our giants in education, there's so many of them, that I look up to, and I think that they were able to give so much of themselves and so much love to the people around them.
One mother gave me this little gift. It's a little jewelry box, and she did needlepoint on it, and she wrote these words: Thanks for loving our children. And to me, this summarized the entire effort of education, because if we fail as educators to actually embrace and love every child who's with us, we've missed the entire lesson of the gospel. We've missed the core of it all.